All right, guys, welcome to The Fight Fan with Pete Hoffman, and we are being joined right now by the former WBO Featherweight champ, Heather Hardy. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, I want to get to Paige Vanzant. I saw you tweeted out that you're very excited about her fight coming up in the bare knuckle fighting this Friday. Give me your in your expertise opinion, because you've been on the both sides. You went from boxing to MMA, and Paige is now going from the MMA world going into boxing and bare knuckle fighting. So how do you feel that she can do in this sort of fight?
Well, she's a competitor. I mean, I always kind of felt oddly connected to Paige because it was almost like she was so pretty that nobody really ever took her seriously, whether she won, whether she lost. She's a warrior. And I think that sometimes when you're real pretty, like she is, people tend to think you're fake. And she's proven so many times that she's a real competitor. I said I'm excited to see it because I'm excited to see whether or not her boxing has really evolved, right? Like, I'm not doubtful of it. I'm just super excited to see how the transition is made, because it's always really exciting. Like, I used to get excited for my fights to be like, wow, I wonder if my boxing is going to be able to beat the other girl's stuff, knowing that I wasn't good at the other stuff. So, I'm genuinely excited as a fight fan to see how she does.
See, that's cool. I like that you dropped the name of the show as well, a fight fan. That's what I'm here for. Like, I've been getting.
I'm good at this.
I know you're professional. I'm the rookie here. No, but seriously, that's what I try to do. Like, I really want to just build and the community up, because they are, even though you're pioneer of the sport, especially for women in boxing, no question. But you are a fan of it still. You haven't lost that passion, which is great. And same way here. Like, I try to get everybody involved in this, and it takes some time. A lot of people at WFAN at my radio station are very excited for the Jake Paul fights of the world, and that's not a fight to me. That's like a show. Like, so how do you change that? How do you get them to convince them to watch a Paige Vanzant bare knuckle fight?
Well, that's really like what you said. Your show is a fight fan. Like, are you a fight fan, or are you just like a commercial watcher, right? Like,
Yeah.
Are you a person fan? People are a fan of this guy, Jake Paul or Logan, whoever their names are, and they want to see what they do. It's like, I kind of joked in the beginning of my career where I had all these people who would come and watch my fight. None of them were boxing fans. They were all Heather fans, and they were coming to support me. And eventually they became fight fans. And then as my career progressed, I got fight fans and boxing fans who liked my style or my, for what I did in the ring and in the cage. But in the beginning, people just kind of support you. So if you have tons of supporters, that guy could I'm sorry. Is that
okay?
Allowed, or can we?
You could do whatever you feel. It's all good.
But that guy could play the piano, and all his watchers would want to come see him do a duet with Billy Joel. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's not boxing. It's that guy's show.
Yeah. Well, that my wife would be into Billy Joel for sure. Now, talk about you as a pioneer of the sport. You've gone back and forth. You've done boxing to MMA, back to boxing. I know the pandemic's been hard on everybody right now, and you, I think, had to take some time off. Are you planning anything yourself? What's going on with your future right now in boxing or MMA?
So when the pandemic hit and boxing kind of shut down, I had to go into survival mode. Like, I abandoned my training. I was working full time, teaching boxing lessons. I mean, throughout the summertime, I was literally just sitting in the park with a set of mitts and gloves, and people would run by and take my cards, and I was literally like selling drugs, boxing lessons in the park. And so I didn't train for about a year. I've been out of the sport. And then, I got a call from Lou, and Lou said, I don't have anything solid, but I will tell you to get ready for something in April. So I right back on it. I'm not looking to go into a world title fight. I don't want to do 10 rounds. I'm a year out of the sport. I'm going to go up a couple weight classes, so I'm not like super focused on just getting off this COVID weight, and really focus on coming back to boxing. So I really won't talk about my plans for the rest of my career until I see how my first kind of smaller scale fight coming back goes, right?
But you would say it would be a boxing fight. It would not be MMA.
Yeah, like I wouldn't hop right in the cage. I mean, that wouldn't be smart of me, since boxing is kind of like my home, my groove. It's like what I am. I would need that first 6 or 8 round boxing match just to kind of get me back in the mix of big fights, because there's really no such thing as a small fight for me in MMA, because it's Bellator. It's always big stage, big show, big opponents, girls who want to kill me so that they can have their like broken nose highlight reel. So, I would definitely kind of need, I hate to call it a tune-up because that's a terrible way to put any kind of a fight, but my kind of jump back into a non-contender.
Do you believe in ring rust? Like Conor McGregor
Yes.
Conor McGregor just fought a couple weeks ago, and it showed that there were some things that he was just missing. Dustin Poirier was just a step ahead of him. Do you feel that, again, you don't want to say it's going to be a tune-up fight, but you believe that your first time back in the ring, you're going to be a little rusty?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, especially at my age, right? I just turned 39, which
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Which 10 years ago, a 39-year-old fighter would have been laughable. So I must say that we're in a different age, like with sports medicine and, the knowledge of taking care of your body, where fighters are fighting much longer. So it's not them, but, you are off a beat. Like your instincts are off a beat. Your timing is off a beat. And that's nothing that being out of the gym for a year that I'm going to be able to make up for at a world title level in a month or 2 months, right?
Who are you training with currently right now? Any other big time boxers or anybody in particular that you've been working hard with to get you back?
Well, I don't remember if you're in New York City,
I am,
but
yes.
the gyms here are so restrictive for training because you're training with masks on and there's no sparring allowed in the city. And so my training isn't exactly in third gear. We're in first gear. I'm really training myself at this point because a lot of the coaches have moved or are not coming into Brooklyn anymore, aren't in Gleason's anymore. So right now it's really just like get some of this weight off, shadow boxing, like I'm kind of in the game enough where the first month of training, which this is only like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I'm back, where I know the job that I have to do right now.
Peloton, I have it. I haven't touched it in a month, but I have it. Do you have one of those too? Because that's just amazing.
I don't have one, but I have, there's one in the gym in my building. So I can go down at any time and use it. I've tried it once and I cursed at that machine more than I've ever cursed at anything. Like my super put his head in the door, was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Fuck you, Jess Sims." Because I wound up, it was funny because I popped it on and the instructor was one of my boxing students. So I texted her, I was like, "You've got some nerve."
Get out of here. Who was the instructor?
Jess Sims.
Jess Sims. I'm trying to remember. I'm a big fan of Kendall. Kendall's the girl that I was trying out. Listen, it's a good program. Not for nothing. I'm not trying to sell it or whatever, but
it's exhausting.
It is.
I hate you, people.
Well, the thing is now was just doing the thing because this has always bothered me where I'm sitting there in the hardest part of the ride or whatever it is. They're sitting there yelling at you and telling you to keep moving, and then they're standing there and like they're not riding themselves. I'm like, what are you doing? How are you gonna expect me to ride?
Or they'll be like, "Okay, now I need you to get up to 23," and you're on 17, gunning it. And I'm like, "You liars! No one can get there."
Well, they're on zero.
I'm a world champion.
They're on zero. That's a trick. They're always on zero. So it's no, they don't. Well, listen, I understand because I listen. I'm from Eastchester, Westchester area, stuff like that. So it's this has been, the pandemic has hit us all. It's definitely ruined all of our plans. Listen, we've all been affected. I know you have a daughter as well. Is she in high school still?
11th grade, man. SAT year. It is not AP classes.
Oh no,
not been easy.
And then how has that been dealing with that as well? Because I have 3 young ones. One's in pre-K. Oh, yeah, I have one's a 3-year-old, so that doesn't really count. He's fine. But I have one in 2nd and 5th, and that's just hands-on.
It's not just the school part, right? Because I have kind of a really book smart kid. My kid is really smart. It's keeping on top of them to do the work and the realization that there's no connect to the outside world. So I have a 16-year-old whose only connection to people is me 90% of the time. So I would, for a long time, her mom, her dad, her teacher, her gym teacher, her cook, personal shopper, her best friend, the person she hates the most, the punching bag. It's like you're wearing 12 hats and at the same time trying to work. Some days I'd be in the park from sun up to sundown, just sitting there trying to make as much money as I could. So, you know, it's not been easy on single moms. Call a single mom, you know, and tell her she's doing a good job.
Well, you're doing a great job. I can guarantee that. So I'm
Thank
sure you
you.
make your daughter very, very proud.
Not at 16, maybe one day.
Yeah, eventually, but eventually it comes around, right? That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
That's what I believe, at least. So I really wanted to have you on because I saw something that bothered me on social media, and I saw a bunch of people talk about it, and a lot of people just pushed it away and said, I can't comment on this. I'm going to stay away from it. But you...
Of course I did.
And that's fine. That's great. Stephen A. Smith.
I knew it.
Listen, I understand his job. I understand his role. But he basically said he is not entertained. Does not want to watch females fight. And it's just not for him. Now, it's his job. He wants to rile people up. I get it. He's getting attention. Your response, your rebuttal. Give me someone who is the pioneer of women's boxing. Give me your response to that.
Well, I saw it and I was initially bothered. And then I had to let it sit with me. Like you notice I never like go off the cuff right away. Like I had to let it sit with me for the day. And it was actually my promoter, Lou DiBella, who tweeted to him. And then I was kind of just like, all right. Because my promoter said, I understand. He said something along the lines of, which he apologized for after I went on that tear of bananas. But he said, and which I realized was a common kind of thought, like, dear Stephen, like, I know that this is your opinion, but it was really in poor taste to say that. And my answer is this. Not wanting to see women do things is not an opinion. That is sexism, and that kind of conversation needs to be completely taken out. Not liking boxing, that's an opinion. Not liking baseball, that's an opinion. But saying I don't like to see women do something that I like, that's sexism. Okay, that's sexism. And what Stephen A. Smith is doing, even if he doesn't really believe it and he just wants to kind of rile people up, what you're doing is no different than that garbage president that we just had for 4 years, who liked to kind of be controversial, give his opinion, and allow all of the people who were already genuinely hateful from the inside come out and feel like that they have an ally. So to hear somebody in such a big position for such a company like ESPN that pushes women in sports, how are you pushing the narrative that we don't belong there? And to further that, and I have to keep going, but to further that, it's like, I recently said this on an interview, you know, the narrative that women don't belong in combat sports or that nobody wants to see women fight is so dated, right?
Right.
And we don't talk like that about other things. Like if your house is on fire, you don't see them going through the fire engine and telling all the women, please go back because I don't want a woman to put out my fire. We aren't telling our military that we don't want women to fight. We're not saying I don't want a female doctor to operate on me. We don't talk like that in any other venue. So why is it that it's okay and so common for our promoters, for the announcers, the referees to be able to so freely talk about such sexism? It's like so built into the system that even women are going, yeah, well, people don't want to see us. What?
Yeah.
What?
And that's false. First of all, that's false because especially you talk about boxing and MMA. Those are the two sports that actually people pay to watch females fight and compete at. Like, I'm not sure what the numbers are for WNBA, there's no NFL for women, but in combat sports, there is a huge audience, WWE, huge audience. So for him to say that, that's the one sport that the women are excelling at to bring them down. I hate that because I'm always saying on the other side, I'm like, wow, this is great. The platform is basically equal, finally, right?
Yeah, and what he's doing really is saying, hey, all you sexist, misogynistic men, I got you. Don't worry. And it's allowing that narrative and that conversation to continue. My problem with it is not so much the thing coming out of his mouth, because lots of people talk that kind of garbage. I don't want to see women fight. I don't want to see women get punched in the face. It's the idea that that is an opinion. That is not an opinion. Opinion is, I don't like ketchup. Opinion is like, I don't wear dresses in the winter. Opinion is, I don't want to shave my armpits. That's your personal opinion. But to say that I want to restrict you from doing something because I don't think that you belong doing it really shows that male privilege that women, I mean, I had to reflect and think, is there any time in my life when I looked at a man and said, he shouldn't have that job? Right?
Yes,
like
I have actually, but that's besides the point.
Well, that's because of the particular man, but it's not to say that men shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
Like, why is that man a hairdresser? Why is that man a doctor? Why is that man a race car driver? Why is that man, like why is that man an ice skater? That's never something that women say, because it's not in our history to say it. Like, this is history repeating itself, where men feel very comfortable thinking that women don't belong. And then it's kind of embodied as their opinion. No, you're an asshole. And we don't talk like that anymore. And we don't convince our kids that it's okay to talk like that, because what 12-year-old girl is listening to you say that, feeling like, damn, man, why do I have to be good at boxing? It's not a girl sport. Fuck him.
It's funny because, like, I'm on that end of, if you don't care about something enough, just don't talk about it. I know he has to for his job, but reality is, like, he didn't have to say that. I for one, I don't like a lot of sports. They don't come out of my mouth. I don't discuss them. You don't need to do that. And that's the point. And that's a lot of things. That's a lot of political stuff these days, a lot of personal stuff. There's a lot of things that affect other people. But how does women in boxing or MMA really affect his life? And that's the point. If it doesn't affect your life, keep your mouth shut. I always used to think that back in the day, it's sex, politics, and religion we don't talk about at the dinner table. But I feel like there's a lot more things we could add on to that list, no?
Yeah. I mean, like, being a complete asshole. And that's exactly what it is. And it reminded me so much of the last president. Like, he would say these highly controversial things just to kind of win over people with hate. And it gave them all this common okay, like, it's okay to be this way because, look, he is. Like, Stephen A. Smith, not to say he's in a position of power, but he's talking on one of the biggest sports platforms in America, on ESPN. And then this is how you speak to your audience members, saying that it's okay. I'm sorry, but that is not only highly irresponsible, but he needs to be checked and corrected. And I even almost feel like ESPN needs to jump out and say, we don't share these views, because it's not an opinion. It's not how he feels. It's sexist, it's discrimination, and it's not okay.
I mean, he's one of their top guys, so I feel like that's something that they'll never touch, unfortunately, at least right now. I mean, in sports, though, that is something that's been happening. I mean, I don't know if you follow. Are you a big sports fan other than boxing and MMA, or?
I mean, when I was a kid, I was a huge Yankee fan, but kind of, they've been garbage the last couple of years. I said it. I said what I said. They've been garbage the last couple of years, and I didn't even fight me. But again,
someone will.
That's an opinion. That's my opinion on the collective performance of that team. But no, I don't really follow sports that much.
Well, recently there's been a lot of things. Like, I'm a Mets fan, and a lot of, like, the Mets employees, like the general manager, got fired within 30 days for some sort of, like, texting issue that he had with a female, not employee, but someone in the industry. He was basically 64 unsolicited text followed by a picture of his junk.
Ugh.
Like that type of stuff. And it's been coming down. I feel like the industry is finally taking a turn. Like, that's the one thing. Like, I don't know about you, celebrity-wise. I've always said this, and I couldn't stand it. When celebrities had gotten this pedestal and would just basically, like, knock industries, knocked MMA. Like, Glenn Close got up there and knocked MMA and said, we can't let people, get turned into NFL and watch MMA, F that. But yet their industry is just as shady and just as disgusting. Look at Harvey Weinstein, Yeah. Every industry is terrible. So how do you fix that?
By having the conversation, right? Like, Stephen A. Smith would be very wise to come out and say, you know what? It's it was a shitty thing for me to say. Check himself. Like, I checked Lou DiBella last night, and he like immediately was like, you know what? Thanks, Heather. I appreciate that. I didn't think of it that way. Like, that's how things stop. You become more mindful of the way that you're treating people and the way that you're making them feel, right? Like, we don't consider racists as people with bad opinions, do we? No. Racism is racism. It's wrong. It's not accepted. Neither should sexism. It should be on the same plane. It shouldn't be a matter of opinion or, you know, like having the conversation is the only thing that's going to change this. And I'm kind of at my age, right? Like, I'm not 20, and with what, like, I've already added to the game of boxing, I don't care who I piss off anymore. I don't care if Stephen A. Smith says, I'm going to make sure she never gets a fight. I don't give a shit, buddy. I already won my world title at Madison Square Garden. I've already done more shit than most, you know, fighters ever dream of coming up. Like, I've thought of that so many times. Like, you can't take anything from me. I'm not afraid to open my mouth anymore.
Do you want to be a politician? Is that something that in your future?
It's so funny because, like, I actually gave it thought. I really did. Like, I have my degree in forensics and stuff and was always, like, super into, like, the law. But as I'm getting older, I find myself, like, much more into the activism than I am into the fighting, you know? Like, I won't jump on a bet about who's going to win a fight, but go ahead. Let somebody say some shit about women. I'm right there.
You know what? Like, it's funny. I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I hate politics so much. I really do. I'm just not a politician at all. I can't stand it. But I feel like I do want to, like, try to get into it because I want to change things. But again, then on the other hand, I'm like, I just feel like you just end up in the BS of it all. And I wouldn't feel good about it.
You certainly do, because there's no perfect side, right? There's no perfect side of politics. And politics in the last, you know, throughout the last presidency have gotten so divisive. It's like, so it's not about money and policies anymore. It almost turned into a matter of morality. And I just felt like, as a person who had a platform and people listening, that it was my responsibility to use it to the best I could. You know, like, I lost a ton of followers being political, but at that point, like, I think we were all kind of forced to show our hands, say, like, who are you? Who am I cheering for? Right. So we all kind of drilled down on what we thought was important to us over the last, I'd say, year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Heather Hardy joining us right now. And, you know, just to get back to some fighting stuff, because that was the point of it. But I had to, Heather, you really are a fantastic spokeswoman, I should say. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But you're fantastic, and I want to make sure that your voice was heard, because it's necessary. Because this type of conversation does need to be talked about. Like you said, that's how you fix it, is you talk about it. But getting back to the fights, you're back into boxing. You're training for boxing. We talked about it a little bit earlier on, like Jake Paul, like that type of thing is like the new wave. You know, I'm excited to see Canelo get back into the ring. That's really cool. Billy Joe Saunders is a good fight that's coming up in the boxing world. But I feel like, as far as headline boxing events, they're just few and far between. And like the Joshua Fury or Joshua Wilder, you know, that fight's so far away. It took so long to get Fury and Wilder to fight. How do they fix that? Because in UFC and MMA, even Bellator, you know, Scott Coker, Dana White, they're doing a good job of putting together fights that fans want to see.
So I think that it's really hard to make changes in boxing, because boxing is so, like, in medieval times, right? Like, you have a small handful of people, right? Like the Bob Arums, Eddie Hearns, a very small handful of people who are making a lot of money, who get to make all the decisions. So where the fans might be, you know, hurting, they don't really care. They're not inclined to change because they're very happy with the way things are running right now. It's hard to ask. Like, people always say to me, like, what is going to change for women's boxing? It's hard to change the sport of women's boxing. Like, Dana White was a young, innovative dude, like, who did the social media, did the promotions, made it mainstream, had all, like, his fighters and stuff on commercials and doing different things. how much boxing do you really see on social media? Be honest, like where they're promoting their fighters. Like Eddie Hearn does a pretty good job with Matchroom, but I mean, outside of that, what do you see? You don't, because those guys are already making all this money. They really don't care to promote anybody. So it's really hard to say what's going to change. We got to maybe wait for these guys to die out.
No,
have their kids take over with better ideas.
Listen, I understand. I'm in an industry where we've been doing a lot of really progressive things lately, which is really good. But it took a while. It took a while for people to be like, oh, we do have to change a little bit of that,
Yeah.
and it's tough. And then you see like
it's like trying to get your grandma to get an iPhone, and she's still got that little flip phone. You're like, no, you can see pictures on it.
Yeah, she didn't want any type of phone. Period. At a story, she definitely didn't want an iPhone.
Exactly.
But like it's funny because I see DAZN and like they almost had an issue with Canelo. Like his last fight, they sold it with like arguably the best guy we could possibly find and put him in a fight with. It's like that's not selling a fight. Like that's and they almost lost Canelo because they couldn't even line up a fight for him. So there's definitely I have concern about that. I understand what they were trying to do. It was a really good idea to sign those big names and give a big contract. But are there even enough names out there for these guys to fight?
And I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? It's like what matchups are out there that are exciting to see. Like, it's not about the one guy who's so great, because, you know, you want to see who is he going to fight. Like right now, I mean, what is it, 140 pounds or 147 pounds? Like the Terrence Crawfords and Errol Spence, like that is a popping weight class that has like all the action in it. Like that's what boxing fans are really waiting to see. Like, who are we going to see Canelo fight again? Triple G? I mean, let's be right.
Like Billy Joe Saunders is actually intriguing. I do have to say I'm semi excited about that because that's more of a name and stuff like that. But before that, yeah, there's just not enough out there, and it's frustrating because I always get into that argument. I'm like, and then I look at UFC and I say they're starting to build their brand better, which is why you look at ESPN, they're like the home of MMA now, which is great. Yeah. It's a highlight reel left and right. It's just a good thing for the sport. You want to see boxing get back in there. There's no reason why they can't merge together and be a happy family. It's combat sports, no?
Right, which would be nice, right? Because then it would show more boxing in America, boxing across the states. Like, there's nothing really happening here right now. The only guy who's really doing anything is, Top Rank's been doing a few shows, but it's mostly been Eddie Hearn and Matchroom in the UK.
What do you think about Mike Tyson, Roy Jones? Like, there was talks about like some sort of like legendary league or something like that. Would that be something that would help build the sport too? Or think that's
it's really hard to say. Like, they had talked so much shit about those two guys like coming back and doing that exhibition, and it was like, you know what? We're in the middle of a pandemic. These two guys, I'm having a hard time coming out of a 1-year layoff, and these guys are 20 years older than me. Right? Coming off of 10, 15, 20-year layoffs. Like, and they came back and they put on a great show for us. Like, sure, there were lots of rules and everything else, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, it's the same way that people will say, I don't want to see women box.
Right.
Right? It's like, if they are two totally capable, sellable fights, I like boxing, right? I like boxing.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I listen, I've watched Tyson's exhibitions before too, so I was like, I don't know if I'm really gonna be into that, because I was a T-Rex he fought like 12 years ago, that guy with the one eye. I wasn't as excited, but this is Roy Jones, so this is a little different.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't be opposed to starting like a legend league where like you do see some of these old timers, whether it's Holyfield or Lennox Lewis or whomever. It's not a bad thing to kind of bring it back.
It wouldn't be. I think that with the rules of the last X, like, it would have to be legit fighting, right? Like, not sparring partners, not like, oh, if you hit him, the thing's over, right? Like, if it was going to be a real league where we were going to pay for it and want to get into it, I'd hope that it would be the same rules as boxing, so that you can actually see an athletic performance, right? Because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I have, I think Clarissa Shields, you've trained with Clarissa Shields, correct?
No, actually, I've never trained with her. I know her, but we've never actually done training together.
She's set to make an MMA debut soon. Am I correct? I know she's working towards it. Has that been announced, that fight?
I don't think they announced the date because she's got this March 15th pay-per-view fight for a world title. So they haven't announced a date, but I know she had said she was going to hop back into her MMA training, and hopefully, I think it was like by the summer or by the end of the year or fall. Or
Has she talked to you about that at all? Like, and got like your opinion and your expertise on this, considering you have made that transition?
No, we haven't even spoken about it. I mean, I'm sure like through social media, I've congratulated her and stuff, but we haven't even spoken about it. She's got such a great team behind her. You know, she's over with Holm, and she's training with really, really experienced girls. She don't need to know about the girl who broke her face.
Hey, listen, but you made that transition. I always feel like you have to reach out and just kind of get an idea of what it is, because there's certain situations that you've been in that someone else can't speak to. You know, we've seen Ronda Rousey. She was badass for so long, but she never made that transition from boxing to MMA. It just didn't happen. So you have to respect that. I always do. I always reach out to someone if I'm in a situation for the first time. That's what I usually do. Is there any specific boxing match, MMA match that you're really excited for coming up?
I'm really excited to see this Paige Vanzant, to be very honest with you. I'm excited to see how she transitions. Like, I expressed an interest in bare knuckle, so like I'm waiting for them to make me a good enough offer to come over. And I just thought, wow, if Paige wins, that would be a pretty exciting fight, me and Paige. But I'm just curious to see how she does and what it looks like, because again, it's a transition, right? So I'd like to see how she transitions from MMA to boxing.
Have you fought bare knuckle ever? Have you ever done that?
Well, when you have street fights as a kid, they don't give you gloves. Like I can remember, like, you get in fights when you're a kid, you wind up on the ground, you go home and your knuckles are all, scratched up from the street. It's been 25 years since I have, but like I was explaining to my other coach, like I transitioned from 10-ounce boxing gloves to 3-ounce MMA gloves, and I really didn't have that hard of a time. So, it wasn't like I got hit and I was like, oh my God. So I'm really not seeing that. Plus, when it comes to boxing, like I forgot more about boxing than most people will ever learn. Right. not just my fight career, but I lived in Gleason's for the last 10 years with some of the richest boxing, the stories, the coaches. I didn't just work with one coach in the corner of a gym. Like, I'm so embedded in boxing culture. So even if I can't do it, I know in my head the thing that I can't do that I have to do. Right.
Yeah.
So I was always super intrigued about this bare knuckle, because that's much more in my wheelhouse than MMA, because I know all the things.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely something that's on the rise for sure. I mean, the fact that Paige Vanzant went over that's pretty impressive. They've had some big names go over, the former MMA fighters and stuff like that. So they are making a nice rise in the
They are,
fighting game.
and like the fact that they're willing to invest like that tells me it's like, in boxing, everyone wants to fight Katie Taylor. Why? That's where the money is. You can fight Paige. Okay, show me the money, baby. If it makes dollars, it makes sense.
That's the other thing too. Like, right now in baseball, there is an agent. Her name is Rachel Luba. She's a sports agent for Trevor Bauer, the top free agent pitcher in MLB, and she's doing a really good job of hyping him up and finding a way to create a nice social media presence for him. But they're also finding a way to get him paid. Yeah. How do you get boxers and MMA fighters paid? Because I see first of all, boxers, the top level boxer, like you said, Katie Taylor, paid. But there's a lot of the undercards that are just fighting for like pennies, basically. And how do you change that? Like, I mean, what do you do? How do you help build, I don't know if it's a union. What do you suggest?
It's really hard to say, because the money all comes from the promoters, right? Like, the promoters are the ones who place value on us. And you have someone like Clarissa, Katie, those girls won the Olympics. They on international stage. It was 2012 before females were allowed and invited to box in the Olympics. In 2012, when you had there were 12 different weight classes for men, there were only 3 for women. So we're still in our infancy of exposure when it comes to women and deserving pay. Like, I made my base mainly from social media, right? Local New York City, pushed the press, pushed the attention. Like I just marketed the shit out of myself, switched sports, got new fans, right? It's like now my popularity comes from people who want to see me fight, right? Because I built that market for myself. But what you're seeing is like, regardless of the market, it all boils down to what the promoters want to pay you. Because I was offered a couple world title fights in the UK for friggin' $20,000. They wanted me to fight a former Olympian for $20,000. And the truth is, it's like, I'm like, no, I'm not even going on a diet for $20,000. But there are girls who'll still do it, so they get away with it.
Yeah, that's a shame. I'm always, because listen, they catch someone who's really hungry, that really wants to do it, really thinks it's going to put them on the map. So I understand, but there's got to be this change. Same way the conversation has to get out there with sexism, racism. There's got to get the conversation out there like, hey, you can pass up on a fight and it might not hurt your career the way you might think it is,
Yeah, like that's why I just feel like if this is my role in boxing right now, to just speak out about all that closed doors kind of stuff that some of these girls who are signed with promoters and, in the midst of building their career, they can't say those things. Because women have been proven that if you talk too much or if you say something or if you cause too much noise, then we'll just replace you because there's a girl right behind you who will take the little money for the hope that things will be different for her.
Would you ever think about being an agent or starting your own company and try to build a brand that way and build up?
I would more be willing to help women on the way up for free than I would be to get down in the dirty business of boxing. It's probably, I don't want to be around it forever. I know that. Like, I don't want to be on the business side of it. I don't want to be on the inside of those phone calls, but I would always be willing to be a voice and steer these girls in the right direction. But like I said, having more girls in the Olympics and the weight class, that is really the key to the exposure right now, which is kind of standing in the way for us for so many years.
It's 2021, Heather Hardy. When are we going to get a podcast?
So I started one with Everlast, and then the pandemic hit. So we did have one episode, but the pandemic hit, they shut down the studio. And the truth of the matter is, they're like, oh, you can do it from home. And I was just like, God, there's so much work because I'm trying to keep the lights on and work. So it is a thought in the future because I do certainly have a lot to say.
You do. You definitely do. And listen, I will say this, the door is always open. If you ever want to jump on and just get something off your chest, please feel free. This is an open conversation. I've been making it very friendly with a lot of other athletes, whether it's baseball, NBA stars. It's a platform for everybody. I like to have a round table one of these days to just have everybody on, just shoot the shit. You know what I mean? So
awesome.
Please feel free.
That was the name of my podcast.
Shoot the shit?
Shoot the shit.
Well, let's go. Come on. Listen.
You see how this conversation just came full circle.
There we go. That's how we do it. That's what, come on. We actually wrote this out, people. We scripted this out. So I'm telling you, listen, if I could do this, you could do this because I'm an idiot. I'm technically stupid. My 7-year-old runs circles around me. I'm a moron with this stuff. I couldn't figure out Zoom for about 7 years.
No, that is a lie. You must be a natural because I could not believe how much work went into creating one episode. Just doing the bios and the introductions and, try to get what points I want to hit and not forget everything. So don't discount your job, man. It is not easy. It's not easy. And if it's easy for you, then you're a natural because this is not a good position. Being on that side isn't so easy. Well,
it's fun, and it's fun having a conversation with you, so I appreciate it. Heather Hardy, is there anything you want to promote? I mean, Shoot the Shit would be great in the future, so let's build that up. But is there anything else you want to promote?
No, I don't have too much going on right now. I wish I did. just getting back into training, look out for my fight date because it's going to be coming. I could use all the fans screaming.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Heather, thank you so much for the time, and please keep in touch, and we'll do this again soon, okay?
So good to talk to you.
All right, you too.